Before TikTok takes this video down, you need to pay attention because I'm going to show you a CIA agent react to what Biden said 2 days ago. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, but things are not looking good.
What I'm going to do with you right now is I'm going to take you through the presidential address as it was published by the White House, and I will actually show you the points at which information was not accurate and where you were misled intentionally using two techniques known as the lie of influence and the lie of omission. So with that, we'll just jump into it because I really don't know what else to say besides that. I am disappointed and sad as an American citizen, and I am frustrated, not necessarily because I believe the president intended to lie to us, but I do believe that either he is being misled or he is intentionally misleading us. Either way, this is my chance to do what I think is right and share with you the points at which I believe we are being misled as the American people, as the American public. So let's go.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come.
Now, right away, with the calling out of this inflection point in history, I believe that the president is exactly right. I could not agree with you more, President Biden, on this point. We are at an inflection point. Now, for those of you who don't know what an inflection point is in engineering terms, it's a point in which a piece of steel or a piece of material starts to break under pressure. And in that point of weakness, it has an inflection. And that is where we are for sure. We are at a point of weakness in history. And the question is whether that weakness is American weakness or some other kind of weakness. But without a doubt, we are at a point in our history where we have to decide and make decisions today that will impact our children and our children's children after that. This is a very important moment.
They tell me I'm the first American president to travel there during a war. I met with the prime minister and members of his cabinet. And most movingly, I met with Israelis who had personally lived through horrific horror of the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October.
So let's take a moment to be honest about the Prime Minister of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is a criminal in the eyes of Israel. He is currently under an indictment and in an open investigation for fraud and corruption. It cost him his prime minister seat in 2019, and it's the reason that Israel's had 3 prime ministers since 2020. Even now, as he sits in that seat since 2022, being reelected with a total of more than 16 years in the prime minister seat, on October 6th, just before the attacks happened in Israel, Netanyahu was at an all-time low in terms of public support in Israel. He is supported by a far-right, conservative, aggressive, and hawkish government, and he was actively trying to change the court system in Israel so that his indictment and investigation would be terminated. The man that we are talking about supporting here, the prime minister that President Biden met with, is essentially a carbon copy of the Donald Trump persona that we have here in the United States. A strong, hawkish, right-leaning conservative who is currently under indictment and facing criminal charges for corruption and fraud, among other things. So don't think for a second that the prime minister in Israel is a good guy. He is not. He is not supported by Israel. He is under criminal charges. And in many ways, the invasion, the aggression that happened on October 8th is a very convenient way of him to redirect his own people off of his own issues. So don't be misled. And I want to make sure that the world understands that Netanyahu is in no way comparable to our own President Biden.
More than 1,300 people slaughtered in Israel, including at least 32 American citizens.
This is another area that I want to make sure we speak about. Body counts. When we start talking about body counts, this is a phenomenon that really didn't exist prior to the Vietnam War. When the White House and when official public politicians speak about body counts, they're doing it so that they can create some kind of emotional reaction from you and I and the audience watching. We want to hear the number 1,300 and think that it's devastating. Let me give you another number. That other number is 3,700. That's how many Palestinian civilians have been lost in this conflict. You will always hear people talk about the number of Israeli deaths, and it is accurate. It's about 1,400 or more, and there's dead from the original October 7th attack. However, there has not been another ground attack since October 7th. And in comparison to that, there have been multiple weeks of aerial bombing that have happened inside Gaza that have killed almost 3 times as many Palestinians. Even worse than that, the number of injured exceeds more than 300% in Gaza versus what happened in Israel. So you have 3 times as much damage being wrought in Gaza against civilians, children, elderly, women, families that are simply landlocked in this this strip of land that was militarily oppressed and domestically oppressed by Israel prior to the war. So while it is atrocious and sad to hear what happened to Israel on October 7th, we have to also remember that if we're going to count bodies, we need to also count the bodies of the victims on the other side.
As president, there is no higher priority for me than the safety of Americans held hostage.
That is the first lie from the president. He does have higher priorities than the American hostages inside of Israel. Let's face it, he's responsible for 300 million people here in the United States, not just the 34 that he referenced in Gaza. So without a doubt, there are priorities, and the president prioritizes the protection of American citizens. But what he's also not telling you is that many of the American citizens are dual citizenship holders. They are both Israeli and American citizens. So if you're not aware that you can have multiple citizenships, there are multiple countries in the United States where we have a agreement where you can have more than one citizenship. It's kind of up to the American people to choose whether a true American citizen with just one citizenship is any different than an American citizen who carries another citizenship. But it's not as if the Americans were targeted by Hamas in their attack. They were not. Hamas was simply snatching and grabbing anybody that they could, knowing that they needed hostages out of Israel, which is why you saw so many young and old being taken, because there was no plan, there was no intentionality between how Hamas was executing killings versus how they were taking hostages. So I don't want you to think for a second that the president is actually prioritizing the hostages in Gaza as his top priority. They are not. He has many, many other priorities, including domestic policies here in the United States and his own long-term political future as the President of the United States. So I'm going to call you out on that, President Biden. I believe that what you said there was not 100% accurate. I believe that that was what's known as a lie of influence, meaning it was an intentional misleading or possibly a misstatement intended to influence the public in your favor.
The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world.
Now, let's talk about Hamas for a moment, because President Biden just called them a terrorist group. Let's be honest about Hamas. They have been labeled a terrorist group by less than 12 countries in the world. The vast majority of the world, including the UN, does not consider Hamas a terrorist group. Instead, they consider Hamas to be a political party, a force, and the legislative body of the Gaza Strip, elected democratically and in power since 2007. So Hamas, whether we like to admit it or not, has a militant wing, but they are also a recognized political party inside the Gaza Strip. They were voted into power. They have an established leader and a hierarchy. And even worse, they are a party, they are a political party without any kind of citizenship, because the Palestinians who they represent aren't a recognized country. So what that means is that Palestine and Hamas are politically accepted by the majority of the world, right? It's really only the United States, the U.S. allies, Paraguay, and the European Union that see Hamas as an actual terrorist organization, and of course Israel as well. The rest of the world sees Hamas as a political group without a country, and importantly, without a military to defend itself. So I want to make sure that you understand that when the president says that Hamas is a terrorist organization, he's really talking from an American point of view only. In the eyes of the Americans and in the eyes of the Israelis, Hamas is a terrorist group. But to be fair, in the eyes of Iran, the U.S. military is a terrorist group. So it's all about perspective on this one.
But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain.
Now, for those who are paying attention, let me know if you guys want a part 2 so you can see more of the lies that are being told. And all you have to do is like, follow, and share this video, and a part 2 will come.
What do you guys think? What do you think? Nah. It's cool. Let it go. Let it go. I'm alright.
I could literally catch him, right?
It's okay.
It's messed up.
Well, no, it's okay.
I could catch him. No, I couldn't.
I know. It's okay. Well.
Can I please go live in the woods for free? What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, I just want to go live in the woods. Like, I can't do this. You're asking me to sell you my entire life just to live with air conditioning? Like, I can't. You made me spend 18 years in school jail. No. The fuck do you mean? It's the woods. I don't care if I croak. I don't care what happens out there. I just want to go live in the woods. Like, yeah, no. What if I go really far? Yeah, we're gonna log that. We'll send men with
Bottle
guns,
rockets.
kidnap you and put you in a cage, okay? Don't fucking try it. Okay, fuck. So I live on the streets? That would be illegal. To exist on the streets? What are you, vagrant? I didn't ask to be born. Shut the fuck up. Okay, well, I'm lucky that there's a creek where I exist, but you can't really drink it. You could drink it if you were inside. The water? Okay, and I'm kind of fucking hungry because none of the trees make fruit. You wouldn't let me do the woods thing. There's nowhere for me to grow a garden. You want me to pay you to catch a fish? Our fish. Okay, is this a forced labor camp? No. No. Okay, so I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't drink water, and you're forcing me to sell my time and my work to other people in order to exist without you kidnapping me and putting me in a cage. Is that correct? Okay. It sounds like a forced labor camp. What are you gonna do about it? Didn't you say something about inalienable rights? Those words ring a bell. That's cute, yeah. I paid attention.
In the Middle East at this point. But that's about to change because there's a company based in California that wants to explore this vast desert for oil.
11,000 miles from San Francisco, there lies a primeval desert, a mass of drifting sand and sun-baked earth 1/3 the size of the United States.
This was sort of a risky decision for the California company because first off, they had no idea if there was actually any oil here.
They knew it would mean sinking into the desert the money of thousands of stockholders in a project that might well end in complete loss.
And second off, this desert was a part of a very hardcore religious kingdom.
The fact that Mecca is the source and the shrine of Islam gives Saudi Arabia a central place in the Islamic and therefore the Arab world.
That was home to the holiest sites in Islam, run by a dogmatic royal family that did not like outsiders, especially non-believing Westerners. But even still, the king of the Desert Kingdom eventually gives the California company permission to explore almost 1 million square kilometers of this desert looking for oil. And after a few years, the bet paid off. And on March 3rd, 1938, in this little patch of coastal desert, they struck gold. Well, actually they struck oil, but it might as well have been gold. So throughout the 30s and 40s, American oil executives, workers, and their families started flocking to the Middle East, establishing the first significant American presence in the region. They set up little cities around the oil operation that were little slices of America, full of the deepest sinful behavior, like allowing women to drive and the consumption of alcohol.
Here is another American colony, complete with air-conditioned houses, 2 hospitals, and an outdoor movie theater.
This is the sort of stuff that is very off limits in Saudi Arabia. It's literally illegal at this point. So you have a lot of Saudis who are not happy about their government letting the Americans in to behave however they want. But the oil kept flowing. And soon the US government goes to the royal family and says, listen, the oil is flowing better than ever. This is awesome. How about we build a little military base attached to our little oil city so that we can, protect you and protect us and protect the oil and stuff. And the Saudis are like, okay, having the great Satan come to our country for oil is one thing, but letting them set up a full-on military base on our soil, and especially when everyone in our country is not happy with their presence in the first place. But, said the royal family, all of this oil is really valuable and it's really nice and we're getting super rich, so they're like, yeah, sure, set up the base. But there was one stipulation that the Saudis had for the Americans. You are not allowed to literally plant a flag, no flagpoles of the United States. You cannot put your flag anywhere on this base. Instead, you can put a little plaque on the side of the building so that your flag is not literally on our soil. And that was the deal. And that's exactly what happened. The US sets up its first military operation in the Middle East in the form of a landing strip that is right next to this oil field. Okay, so all of this infrastructure that the Americans were building required someone to build it. They needed a construction company. And there was one construction company that the Americans really liked that helped them build their oil city and their base. This company was founded and run by a guy named Mohammed. Now listen, do you think I'm really giving you the backstory on the construction company that built the air base and the oil city just because that's interesting and I like to talk about construction? No, this is actually very relevant to the story, and you will see why very soon. So the Americans and the Saudis are having this forbidden oil bromance, and it's going really well, and they are just, the oil is flowing, everyone's getting rich, and meanwhile, the rest of the Middle East is looking at Saudi Arabia and they're like, dude, WTF, why are you like in bed with America? And like, why are you letting them set up a landing strip in your country? And the Saudi royals are like, do you realize how rich we're getting right now? Like, if you were in our position, you would do the same thing, Egypt. Okay, so it's the 1950s, and let's get back to Mohammed, the construction guy. His company, by this point, is thriving. The American presence in oil land is just exploding, and he is building all of the stuff for it. And so this guy is just has a giant business. And he starts to have children. Well, in fact, he had a lot of children, like 54 children, because he had 22 wives, because that is a thing in Saudi Arabia to this day. Anyway, the point is, one of Mohammed's sons is named Osama. I told you this was going to be relevant. Okay, a reminder that Saudi Arabia is not the entire Middle East. So, I'm going to leave the Osama bin Laden cliffhanger for a moment to tell you what else was going on in the Middle East at this time. Remember that it was the hunt for oil that brought the US to Saudi Arabia originally. But now, in the 50s and 60s, there was a new reason for the US to think about the Middle East. And that reason is because there's another big superpower that has nuclear weapons, called the Soviet Union, who is coming into the region and saying to everyone in the Middle East at this point. But that's about to change because there's a company based in California that wants to explore this vast desert for oil.
11,000 miles from San Francisco, there lies a primeval desert. A mass of drifting sand and sun-baked earth, 1/3 the size of the United States.
This was sort of a risky decision for the California company because first off, they had no idea if there was actually any oil here.
They knew it would mean sinking into the desert the money of thousands of stockholders in a project that might well end in complete loss.
And second off, this desert was a part of a very hardcore religious kingdom.
The fact that Mecca is the source and the shrine of Islam gives Saudi Arabia a central place in the Islamic and therefore the Arab world.
That was home to the holiest sites in Islam, run by a dogmatic royal family that did not like outsiders, especially non-believing Westerners. But even still, the king of the Desert Kingdom eventually gives the California company permission to explore almost 1 million square kilometers of this desert looking for oil. And after a few years, the bet paid off. And on March 3rd, 1938, in this little patch of coastal desert, they struck gold. Well, actually they struck oil, but it might as well have been gold.
We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military.
keeps growing and growing and growing. Our first 18 years of life, we're not spending anything. So nothing is going over here, our first 18 years. That's growing and growing and growing for 18 years, and it's being hypothecated and traded. And they've done a good job of managing it. They really have. First 18 years, it's growing and growing and growing. You're not spending anything. You're not adding anything to the debit side. Then you go get a job, and you get married, and you go out and you buy a house. I'm just going to use numbers. And the numbers themselves don't matter. It's the concept, okay? You buy a car or two. You buy some utilities or two over your lifetime, some medical bills, some food, whatever. They keep track of it all through your tax returns, your credit card, your bank statements. Banking is all tied into the IMF, the Federal Reserve. We got a big buildings of bean counters called the Department of Fiscal Services, and those accountants just keep track of everything, everybody's life. And this all starts to add up on the debit side, and this just keeps growing and growing and growing on the investment side. At some point in time, you die, and it goes through probate. They take some of this, and let's just say over your lifetime you've spent, I'm going to round it off to $10 million. So they subtract $10 million out of your investment, and they pay off all this, and it becomes a zero balance. They even pay back the initial loan to the International Monetary Fund, plus interest. That was a loan from a foreign entity, by the way, to the Public Charitable Trust. And they pay it back. The balance is zero. Now this has, let's just say for this discussion, has $90 million left in it. What happens to it? The Sesta QV Trust lives on in perpetuity forever. Everyone who has ever died since 1933 is currently funding government. This money gets reinvested. They can't take this, but the balance must stay the same forever. But if it keeps earning, they just sweep it off the top, and it funds government. It's called off-book funds. In the states, it's GSA, and in the federal government, it's CQV. And it continues to fund government. Why do you think they don't care if they spend $3 trillion on foreign entities?
Because it's not their money.
It came out of your trusts. It's not part of taxes.
No, this is not just a virus, but one discovered that cannot die, super strong, and has just been released to the public. Scientists named Anatoly Brochkov discovered and revived a virus that has lived 3.5 million years and is still thriving and multiplying. Known as Bacillus F, Anatoly Brochkov had injected the virus in mice, flies, and other animals, and what he found was terrifying. When injected in these animals, they would live either 2 or 3 times longer and were much stronger. Many were terrified what the government could possibly do with this type of virus and if this was going to be used for military battle, with scientists saying this virus could be used not only to extend human life, but sustain it forever. Anatoly, upon his research, injected himself with the virus, for funsies. Upon injecting it in himself, he says that he has not had as much as a cold in the last decade.
After I took it, I never had the flu for 2 years, at least for 2 years. So any cold, any type of the cold.
And then many others theorize this virus could be the cure for many different modern diseases. Would you get this?
Aliens take over the Earth. They then announce that they will be forcing the humans to work a tyrannical 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, in exchange for basic rights like housing, medical services, and food. Needless to say, they are very confused when the humans celebrate their new alien overlords. "People of Earth," the alien began, its voice smooth yet powerful, "we, the Zelfirians, now oversee your planet. From this day forth," the alien continued, "each human will be subjected to the most strenuous of workloads, a brutal regimen of 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. In return, we shall provide housing, medical care, and sustenance free of charge." The world was silent, not quite believing what the aliens had just said. Then all of a sudden, the humans erupted in joy. People danced in the streets and cuddled their families. The aliens didn't know what to make of it. The usual reaction was one of crushing defeat, not euphoria. On the mothership, High Chancellor Erzak turned to his advisor. "Have we miscalculated? Why are the Earthlings so jubilant?" "They must be mocking us," replied Advisor Latar. "Or perhaps it's some form of psychological defense mechanism?" Commander Falin wasn't convinced. "I've monitored their transmissions for years. This seems genuine." They decided to investigate further. Posing as humans, Zelfirian researchers went undercover, mingling with the populace to understand their unexpected elation. At a park in London, researcher Galix approached a man playing with his kids. "Isn't it tragic, the alien takeover?" The man laughed. "Are you kidding? Before, I barely saw my kids because of my 2 jobs. Now I work only 16 hours a week and have time to be a father. It's fantastic. In New York, Zinnia talked with a waitress. How do you feel about our new life? The waitress grinned. I used to work 60-hour weeks on my feet the whole time. My back was killing me. Now, life's good. Similar sentiments echoed globally. The Zelfirians, masters of many galaxies, were renowned for their shrewd understanding of other species. Yet, with humans, they had misjudged spectacularly. Back on the mothership, Galix presented the findings. High Chancellor, humans were already working themselves to the brink. In their system, it's not uncommon for individuals to work multiple jobs, long hours, with barely any time for leisure or family. Our tyrannical demands gave them something they hadn't had in years: free time. Razak looked thoughtful. So our harshest punishment turned out to be their greatest gift. Back on Earth, families, which once used to get together only on special occasions, now had dinner together every night. Parents could be seen cheering for their children at school sports events. Libraries and museums, once visited mostly by tourists and students, now had locals lining up, eager to absorb knowledge and art. Entrepreneurs and innovators, free from the shackles of long work hours, birthed ideas that transformed industries. The arts flourished as people had the time to delve deep into their creative minds. Music, literature, and visual arts saw a renaissance that historians would later describe as the golden age of creativity. And so it was, in the annals of history, that the humans of Earth remembered not an invasion, but a gift. They worked merely 4 hours a day for 4 days a week, leaving them ample time to relish life's simple joys. Parks echoed with laughter, homes resonated with love, and hearts overflowed with gratitude. The streets, once filled with hurried steps, now had dancers and dreamers, all under the benevolent watch of their unexpected saviors, the Zelfirians.
I warned y'all of terrorist attacks on the United States, and a lot of people laughed it off and said, oh, bring it on, you know, it stands no chance. Well, we got a big warning from the FBI. We might be here. Watch this.
The most pressing national security threats that what we face and what we're doing to tackle them are always important, but it seems especially well-timed this year with the dangerous implications the very fluid situation in the Middle East has for our homeland security. The reality is that the terrorism threat has been elevated throughout 2023, but the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level. Since the horrific terrorist attacks committed by Hamas against innocent people in Israel a few weeks ago, we've been working around the clock to support our partners there and to protect Americans here at home. We assess that the actions of Hamas and its allies will serve as an inspiration the likes of which we haven't seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate several years ago. In just the past few weeks, multiple foreign terrorist organizations have called for attacks against Americans and the West. Al-Qaeda issued its most specific call to attack the United States in the last 5 years. ISIS urged its followers to target Jewish communities in the United States and Europe. Hezbollah has publicly expressed its support for Hamas and threatened to attack U.S. interests in the Middle East. And we've seen an increase in attacks on U.S. military bases overseas carried out by militia groups backed by Iran. Here in the United States, our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals or small groups, will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives. That includes not just homegrown violent extremists inspired by a foreign terrorist organization, but also domestic violent extremists targeting Jewish or Muslim communities. We've already seen that with the individual we arrested last week in Houston who'd been studying how to build bombs and posted online about his support for killing Jews. And with the tragic killing of a 6-year-old Muslim boy in Illinois in what we're investigating as a federal hate crime. But as I said a few moments ago, on top of the homegrown violent extremist and domestic violent extremist threat, we also cannot and do not discount the possibility that Hamas or another foreign terrorist organization may exploit the current conflict to conduct attacks here on our own soil. We have kept our sights on Hamas and have multiple ongoing investigations into individuals affiliated with that foreign terrorist organization. And while historically our Hamas cases have identified individuals located here who are facilitating and financing Hamas.
Osama bin Laden was so clear about why he hated America. And he's like, look, I hate you because you murder innocent civilians in the Muslim world, you prop up brutal dictators in the Muslim world, you prop up Israel, who mistreats the Palestinian people, and you have your bases in our Holy Land in the Arabian Peninsula. And then they're like, nah, he hates us because we're free. Like, he didn't mention anything about freedom there. And then if you say that, they're like, well, are you defending Osama bin Laden? And you're like, no, I'm just saying, listen to your enemies. There's a reason why he hates us. And if you listen to Vladimir Putin and what he's saying, I mean, look, he's wrong for invading Ukraine. And I mean, you know me, Joe, I'm the most anti-war fucking person there is. And there's no excuse for that. And like tens of thousands of people have died. It's horrible. And a lot of them are soldiers, but a lot of them are civilians. And, but to say he was unprovoked is like insane. It's just only people who know nothing about the history of this conflict would say there was no provocation.
Did you see the conversation that Roger Waters had with that CNN guy?
Yeah, and right, because Roger Waters was awesome on that. Because he knows what he's talking about, dude. And he's right about all of that shit. Look, the promise, and this is what he was saying, and he's absolutely right, is that the promise when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and this was like verbally promised and put in writing, was that NATO would not expand 1 inch to the east. And NATO at that point, the line then was through Germany, right? Like the western half of Germany was in the west, and the eastern half was with the Soviet Union. And they were like, we'll let all of these nations, secede, and the Soviet Union will collapse, and we're giving up on communism. It was one of the greatest things that ever happened. And the deal was, okay, you do that, then we won't move NATO. We won't move our military alliance into your area that used to be your realm of influence. And every single president since then has moved NATO east to the point that NATO is now on Russia's border. And in Ukraine, even though they didn't officially join NATO, there was always talk of it. Kamala Harris, right before the start of the war, said we're looking to put Ukraine into NATO. And they put under George W. Bush, they put in Poland these dual-use rocket launchers. There's a big complaint that Vladimir Putin has, that he's like, these can be used to get nukes here in a matter of minutes. Like this is like a threat to us that we cannot tolerate. And then in 2014, there was a coup in Ukraine that was completely led by the West. I don't know if you've ever heard, but like I think I sent you actually once the tape of Gideon Rose, who was the editor for Foreign Affairs magazine on the old Stephen Colbert Report show back when Colbert was hilarious.
F Israel and any Jew who supports Israel. This person works for you. This is Nuja Ali, an employee of the Department of Homeland Security. That's not all she posted. This is a paraglider, a Hamas paraglider with the celebratory Free Palestine. Is this typical of people who work at DHS? This is an asylum and immigration officer who is posting these frankly pro-genocidal slogans and images on the day that Israelis are being slaughtered in their beds. What have you done about this?
4 things I'd like to say to you. Number 1, your question to suggest that that is emblematic of the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security is despicable.
I'm sorry, what have you done? This person works for the Department of Homeland Security. Have you fired her?
That was 1 of 4 answers.
Have you fired her?
1.
Have you fired her? Don't come to this hearing room when Israel has been invaded and Jewish students are barricaded in libraries in this country and cannot be escorted out because they are threatened for their lives. You have employees who are celebrating genocide, and you are saying it's despicable for me to ask the question? Has she been fired? Has she been fired?
So that individual has been placed on administrative leave.
So she's not been fired?
Number 2, the individual was hired in 2019.
Why has she not been fired?
Number 3, I cannot speak to an ongoing personnel matter.
Why has this person not been fired? Your answer is you can't speak to it? This isn't sufficient to fire her?
I am not in a position.
She's still on your payroll as we sit here today.
I'm not in a position to speak about an ongoing personnel.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking you how many cases she adjudicated.
My answer remains.
Did she adjudicate any cases involved?
Antarctica is a land of extremes. Nearly 98% of the ground is covered by an ice sheet up to 3 miles thick. A mountain as towering as Japan's Mount Fuji at 12,400 feet would not even break the surface. During its peak season, it is home to only 4,000 scientists and military personnel.
It holds our imagination. Old maps that said, "Here be monsters."
Although it was discovered nearly 250 years ago, scientists have more questions than answers when it comes to this frozen continent. Due to the sheer depth of the ice covering its landmass, the surface of Antarctica is unable to be seen with the naked eye. And ancient astronaut theorists propose that it is not just the geology that is hidden from us. They suggest there is far more human and perhaps non-human activity happening in Antarctica than we've been told.
Something seems to be going on this mysterious continent at the South Pole. And it has been theorized by a number of people that Antarctica is some kind of alien base.
Rumors of extraterrestrial activity in Antarctica have circulated for years. If these accounts are true, and there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence in Antarctica today, could it have been there for hundreds or even thousands of years? In July 2018, Linda Moulton Howe interviewed a whistleblower who offered to provide her with classified information regarding Antarctica on the condition that she not reveal his identity. Her source, a retired Navy SEAL who she identifies as Spartan 1, provided her with details of an ancient structure he claims to have visited during his time at the South Pole.
At that time, my rank was First Lieutenant Commander, Naval Special Operations. We were inbound the southeast coast of Antarctica. We were dispatched for, unofficially, was a research reconnaissance mission. Officially, it was to find a certain individual, obtain any information, and bring it back.
What was the date?
August 2003.
According to Spartan 1, when he and his team reached their destination, they encountered a large octagonal structure protruding from the ice. Cautiously, they proceeded to enter it.
At the very top of the first structure that we entered, there was almost 18 feet poking from the ice. The rest of it was hidden under the ice. Each door was the same, anywhere from 18 feet thick to around 30 feet thick. And even though these doors were that thick and that heavy, you could take one finger and push them and they would open. There was no resistance whatsoever. The outside temperature was at least 40 degrees below zero. Once you stepped inside these structures, the temperature was an ambient 68 to 72 degrees.
What about the ceilings, hallways, floors?
It was lighted from the inside, but we could not find the source of light. It was a lime green in color. The walls were lined with what I call hieroglyphics, but nothing of hieroglyphics that I've ever seen in my life.
Could there really be mysterious structures buried at the South Pole? Structures built by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization in our remote past.
Buried underneath the ice in Antarctica could well be stone temple constructions. There could be biological material, remains of beings that lived there and could still be there. It could be the greatest reveal in all of human history.
Can I try it with an arrow?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
You think so? I have a 90-pound compound bow that shoots 520 grain arrows at 300 feet per second.
We're going to try right now if you want.
I bet I can get in there.
Okay, I'll bet you can.
I think we should do it.
Absolutely.
When you want to do it right now?
Yeah, I can do it right now.
Okay, let's do it right now.
Bring it back. You start to you know, have the arrow come back in. I mean, just beware of ricochets. Like, you might want to do it at a slight angle. You know what I mean?
Blew the arrow apart.
Yeah.
Flatten the tip of the arrow. Look at the tip of the broadhead. That's impressive.
Hey, cutie.
Thank you. Well, now we know.
They had wiretapped Marilyn Monroe's phone, and she was calling up Bobby Kennedy and a friend of hers named Rothberg in New York, who was an art dealer, saying that she was going to hold a press conference to tell the whole world what Kennedy had told her about, and I'm quoting, the objects from outer space from the 40s found in New Mexico, a clear reference to Roswell and a couple of the other events that happened out there. So Marilyn, because I think the Kennedy brothers had distanced themselves because the affair she was having with Jack Kennedy was a little bit getting too well known, she was angry. And so she was threatening to spill the beans in a public news conference where the whole world would have been there. So before she could do that, Wetworks killed her, made it look like an overdose of drugs. Kennedy was livid that that happened. But he was working on an executive order at that time that would have dissolved the agency and a lot of these operations that were dealing with this.
The agency is in CIA?
Yeah.
What is our origin? Not the apes, not the Big Bang, not Mother Nature. Our origin is God. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. This is our origin. St. Paul says, you want to have a change of mind, a change of heart, a change of way of living, go back to God who created you. That's the only way to end up being worldly and begin being heaven. Go back to God. When you go back to God, what is God going to give you? His word. This word was a thought, was an idea. That idea was to make you like Jesus. That idea from the very beginning, before creating Adam, God had this idea that when I come to create Adam, I want Adam, i.e. the human race, to be the standard of Jesus, my beloved son. I wanted all humans to be Jesus, like him. So when you go back to God, he will give you his idea, the Holy Bible, his word.
So I'm standing just off the western wall of the Temple Mount, the western wall because it's the wall that's facing towards the west. Now we have this pile of stones all along the walls of the Temple Mount. These are evidence for the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy when he said, there won't be one stone left on top of another. At the time of Jesus, the two magnificent buildings that were on top of the Temple Mount were, of course, the temple itself, and then the royal stoa. And Jesus spoke of these buildings that not one stone would be left on top of another. They all would be cast down. Well, what does that mean? Cast down off of what? Cast down off of the Temple Mount platform. And that's exactly what happened to the buildings up there, just as Jesus prophesied. They were destroyed, not one stone was left on top of another, they all were cast down off of the Temple Mount and came crashing down on this Roman street that I'm standing on now. That pile of stones came over this whole area here, but these stones were removed during archaeology to get down to the street level that you see here. And look at the impact that we have the evidence for in this street from where those stones came down off of the Temple Mount and smashed into this street level here. This is amazing archaeological evidence for the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy.
Let's talk about the World War III news. Oh man, what the hell is going on? So the country of Yemen has declared war on Israel, saying that they're getting ready to do more attacks on Israel since Israel started their ground offensive against Gaza. They said they will not stop until Israel stops their operation. Anyways, watch this.
دفعة كبيرة من الصواريخ البالستية والمجنحة وعدد كبير من الطائرات المسيرة على أهداف مختلفة للعدو الإسرائيلي في الأراضي المحتلة. إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية تؤكد أن هذه العملية هي العملية الثالثة نصرة لإخواننا المظلومين في فلسطين.
Yeah, it's safe to say these guys are not playing around right now. Blinken's speech also got interrupted.
Why aren't they at the table? Ceasefire now! I beg you! Ceasefire now!
Netanyahu also made a comment about the ceasefire, pretty much saying that ceasefire is off the table. Listen to this.
Clear Israel's position regarding a ceasefire. Just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or after the terrorist attack of 9/11, Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attack.
Yep, no ceasefire. Here's an aftermath after an Israeli strike on Gaza. This is wild. And we have another situation brewing up between the Philippines and China, as the Philippines told China, well, they're not going to stop them from going to the show. China's been blocking their ships and giving them a hard time, spraying at them, doing all types of things. The United States warned China we'd probably go to war with them. But anyways, listen to this.
The Philippines accused China of creating unnecessary tension and hyping up what it called a routine patrol operation by a Philippine Navy ship in Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. This was after China accused the said ship of illegally entering into its waters. Now, what China views as an intrusion, the Philippines sees as a right to patrol its exclusive economic zone.
We have an FBI director warning that there is multiple investigations open into the individuals with connections to the Hamas and says that Iran-backed Hezbollah has attempted operations within the United States. I was trying to warn people, like, these guys are already here. And now they're putting the warning out. Now we have a alert, you know, that there could be attacks on our soil. Maybe not drones and missiles, we don't know, but on our people. He said the war in Gaza has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level, and said the attack on Israel could inspire attacks throughout the world. Well, their attacks on Gaza can too. I'm sorry, I'm an unbiased channel. Taiwan is preparing their bases for an EMP attack from China. Yeah, Taiwan fortifies military base to withstand Chinese nuke-delivered electromagnetic pulse attack. So far, their bases have already undergone this transition, so one of their bases are already ready for an EMP attack from China, but what about the rest? So Finland is now blaming a Chinese container ship that was owned by a Russian company that fled the scene after its anchor damaged a Finland gas pipeline. Somehow communication cables got severed as well. Nobody knows what happened there. Why is this part important? Because Germany is issuing an ominous warning about a war in Europe. Germany's defense minister has warned there could be a war in Europe as he defended his response to emerging threats from Russia and Iranian aggression. Whoa, where is this going, bro? We have Kosovo and Serbia brewing up, which, you know, that can cause a war in the Balkans. And they're already saying a festering powder keg in Europe is lurking in the shadows of the Israel-Hamas war. Nah, I would say in the shadows of the Russian-Ukraine war. Here's the one about Yemen declaring war against Israel. Here's the one about Israel's tanks penetrating deep inside of Gaza. And there's just so much going on, man. Like, this shit's getting crazy. And the United States just created a nuclear bomb that was 24 times more powerful than one dropped on Japan. So we got a lot of countries getting ready to fight, or is fighting now. We have a financial collapse. We have our leaders in chaos. We have our people in chaos. We have so much going on right now. What would you call this? I mean, I would say this would be the start of a world war. So get your popcorn, because it's about to get hot. More news next.
Electricity has intelligence. Watch what happens when you add 18,000 volts to a Petri dish full of tiny metal balls and castor oil.
We say we have a commander-in-chief, but really the commander-in-chief is Larry Fink today. The guy running BlackRock is really the president of the United States. If we look at the kind of influence he's got in every industry, Joe. And he's like, well, I kind of feel bad. I'm ashamed that all the weaponization, the word, ESG is being used and all this other stuff. And Elon tweeted about the ESG. I don't know if you remember when Elon tweeted about ESG, saying the S in ESG is satanic. Okay? So this is a part where even a Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, says, look, I love Larry Fink, but I'm not interested in having an emperor. Some words like that he said about Larry Fink. So this motive, and by the way, Larry Fink is an interesting guy because he majored in college political science. His aspirations was politics. He accidentally got into money, and he learned the trade, and then he lost $100 million at 36 years old, I think, and then he teams up with Schwartzman, and they start this company, and after a couple years, they got $5 billion under management, $8 billion, and $32 billion. And then they have a difference because, he wants to give equity, and Jamie's, Schwartzman's like, no, and then they separate. But influence of politics, you get into business, you're a billionaire. It's you, Soros. So I'm extremely concerned about what these guys are up to. And we think our president is the most powerful person. That person's not. Because behind closed doors, they're going to be like, look, guys, let's relax. That guy's only going to be there for 4 to 8 years. We're going to be all right. He'll be out. We're running the world. We're okay. We were running America, but now we're running the world. We control all the ETFs in America. We're controlling all this stuff. Everyone has to come through us, and we can tell everybody what to do because everybody fears not getting money from us, from being downgraded. A Tesla on ESG score is nothing, but a Philip Morris gets an A rating. How the hell the company that's Philip Morris has a better environmental social governance score, DEI, not DEI, but the CEI, the score they give it over Tesla. So they can bully some of these guys. Now, Elon is vocal. Elon can stand up. Elon's not the guy that can be bullied. But some of these other guys that don't have 150 million followers and they don't own a company called Twitter, they may be billionaires. They may be $50 million guys, CEOs. But they got to sit there and say, babe, if you say something, you're going to lose your $26 million your salary. Just do what Larry tells you to do. Imagine if you had control of 88% of CEOs of S&P 500 companies. What kind of influence do you have?
McDonald's, their CEO, said that they're starting to see pushback on some of their prices.
McDonald's is starting to forget their role here. Come here. McDonald's was a place that you go to when you had $3 in your bank account and you don't get paid till next week and you just want a meal with some kind of substance. McDonald's was there to save the day, right? This was already said before, but McDonald's thinks that we were eating their food because it was just that delicious. No, we were eating there because it was cheap. It was affordable, right? It was delicious for the price that it was at, right? Does that make sense? The fact that now McDonald's is raising their prices so high, parents used to ask their kids if they had McDonald's money. Parents are starting to not have McDonald's money. Does that make sense? Right? McDonald's took away the snack wrap. They took away all day breakfast. They took away the dollar menu. Right? The difference between McDonald's and Chick-fil-A is only $1.50. If any fast food place had any kind of brains, they would lower their prices right under McDonald's because people who are struggling still need a burger. Does that make sense?
McDonald's, they're
my God, no, fuck that.
They say they have. They appear to have. Okay, well, it's a strange story, but part of the briefings I've gotten is that the moon was put in place 65 million years ago, and there's some debate as to whether it was then or a lot more recent, but I don't know if they really know. But one of the theories is the moon was put in place to bring about the fall of the dinosaurs, to create seasons. That the moon is a spaceship, that it was flown into position, it orbits the Earth, and in so doing, mammalian life now predominates, whereas before it was reptilian life. And the reptilians had, the dinosaur species apparently did evolve into a hominid race that was intelligent, that got wiped out when this took place, the 65 million year ago incident. And they did get driven underground, so that is a classic element of the story. But then the Draco Alliance, the negative ETs, say that, we persecuted the reptilians, we traumatized them, we drove them underground, and now we have to pay tribute, we have to pay rent to be here. And so the treaty, the negative treaty, is that we're apparently giving them humans as
our meat suits.
Yeah, for whatever they want to use us for, whether they want to dine on us or have us as workers or whatever.
Wow.
We trade a certain number of humans per year. So in my own experience, Danica, I've had multiple invitations to this group. I've had bribes in the billions of dollars offered to me.
I mean, Greer's talks about getting bribed for billions too. I've interviewed him a couple of times.
When you go out there and you're involved in this stuff like I am, they really would love to have you on their side. They really would love to have you as a mouthpiece. And so I was told, for example, that I could do everything the way I do it now, and the only thing that I would have to do different in order to get this money is to, quote-unquote, speak favorably about Lucifer. And they had this philosophy they wanted people to talk about, which is that, Lucifer is a benevolent, misunderstood angel. And God abandoned us up in heaven, but Lucifer stayed down here with us. Look, any God that tells you got to go around hurting people is not a God I want to be involved with.
This is why I keep telling people, if you want to know about Lucifer and his fall, go to Isaiah chapter 14, starting in verse 12. Also in Ezekiel chapter 28, where it refers to the lamentation of the king of Tyre, comparing him to Lucifer and his fall. People go, the Dracos, the reptilians, they're part of this race, they're part of that race, they're part of an ET race. Yeah, they're part of one. Lucifer in the garden was the serpent. It all stems from there. Now we go, well, that's only a few thousand years ago. No. According to modern day traditional teaching that is to make you blind, it's only a few thousand years ago. This has been going on for millions of years. Linda Moulton Howe, she talks about the 70 million year experiment of the dinosaurs, and that the Dracos were part of that. The human sacrifice, the blood sacrifice, all of this, the pineal gland and all that of the fear factor and all this stuff. Who do you think's feeding on that? These are as close to demonic entities as you can get. They shapeshift. I've seen them. They shapeshift. They do whatever they want to do. And they're walking amongst you, and you think we're a bunch of kooks and crazy for saying this. Those of us who do this and those of us who talk about this, we don't do it for no reason. I'm telling you right now, I know David Wilcox is he's a writer, he's a producer, movie producer, and things like that. People are, he's just trying to get, recognition or trying to come up with these stories to get fame. Well, he's not. And he mentions Stephen Greer being part of the groups and things like this. But Stephen Greer says that anybody that believes in reptilians or all this other stuff, that's hogwash. He calls it hogwash. Look it up. Well, why is he talking about him in this footage? And in the same footage, he's talking about reptilians. So why does Stephen Greer say they're hogwash? I'll leave that up to you. Leave your comments.
We're with former NOAA biologist Dr. Paul Robertson and joined by Dr. Torsten Schmidt. He was the lead geologist on a submarine crew that recorded on March 6th of this year the astonishing footage we just watched, and I'd like to start out with some reactions. Dr. Paul Robertson.
I'd really like to see what's on that second camera.
I'm glad. I think we all do. Our viewers at home, too, would like to see that. We're going to show you that right now. Let's take a look. Dr. Robertson.
No, sorry. Can we play that back, please? You got it.
Dr. Robertson, is this the creature that you and your team found in South Africa?
From what I can see here, yes. The body recovered was incomplete, but based on the remains that were taken from us, it looks like the same species.
I just knew I was looking into the face of another intelligence, another species like us.
Dr. Smith, tell us.
Side of
You
that
don't want to
Trump
be
machine,
Mike
if you're a
Pence.
Republican. Oh, that poor fuck. What did you see that interview that he did with Tucker Carlson?
You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years. Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet, your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern.
That's it. No one cares about you now. Now, like, he literally killed his campaign with that one conversation with Tucker Carlson. Side of
Seen where video games are already at with this stuff?
Dude, it's crazy.
It used to be Super Mario Brothers. Mario goes in the castle, and text appears. Thank you for saving me, but the princess is in another castle. That was the extent of NPC communication with you. It advanced to games now where you can choose to say something, and then a voice actor's scripted line will speak. That's a great idea. Let's get the mission underway. And you're like, cool. Now, with text to voice and predictive language models, video games have already started. You're wearing a headset, you walk up to the NPC, and you say something like, hey, idiot, ugly, I want to buy some soda. And the NPC goes, who are you calling an idiot? If you want to buy something, be polite. A generated predictive response. We are years away from people saying, I no longer want to live in reality. I'm going to go into this universe where I can tune out, and you're going to be sitting in your living room talking to fake people.
So y'all know about the TV show The Simpsons that be predicting everything? Yeah, let's see what they have to say about GMO food.
We're eating genetically modified vegetables.
This video is for entertainment purposes only.
This corn doesn't look so
big
big.
they are.
That's baby corn.
What?
American corporations should stop playing God with nature. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're all grown by the vegetable division of Union Carbide. Mom, my potato is eating a carrot. That's it. From now on, I'm growing all our vegetables myself.
You made it through another Taco Tuesday. Back in the bucket till next week.
Won't those vegetables go bad?
Nope, they're genetically modified to stay fresh.
This is a cucumber from my kitchen that I've had for 3 fucking months. It hasn't started to decompose. The only change that it has is the color. Now Simpsons, you was right about another one. Let me know what y'all think about GMO and The Simpsons in the comments. Like or follow for more wisdom and stay tuned.